All right, welcome to your last and final set of notes for Rome 2 and for the year. Dad joke, I guess. So, for those of you who were watching this at home on Monday, that means that we have a test coming up Thursday and Friday. Wednesday, I will drop a review for you, for everybody actually, online and on Classroom to review all the stuff that we went over on our notes and to specify certain things that will be on your test. Now, keep in mind that not everything that I cover will be on the test. And there are some things that probably will be on the test that are on your notes. So the number one place to realize where all your stuff is on your notes. On your notes and on your vocabulary. So make sure that you know what you're doing. Make sure you look over your count sets of notes. There really are not that many. So where we last left off, whether you're at home or you were at school, is we're talking about the decline of Rome. Now, this is not your note set. You already have this, but our stuff is at the end of this. So one of the major concepts of your test is to talk about what happened at the end of Rome and how they fell slowly. Like I said, Rome wasn't built in a day. Rome didn't fall in a day. So remember the list of all these things that we talked about. The bad emperors, the bribery, refusing to pay taxes, too many slaves, issues in the military, the plague, inflation, food not being made, going into bartering. So again, all those problems, those are big reasons why Rome fell. But I really want you to talk about your emperors too, your lack of leadership. Though you did have Diocletian divided, tried to make it more manageable. And then you had, let's see, Constantine. There we go. Constantine, he said that sons had to work in their father's trades. And we said he moved to Constantinople. And so that was an issue as well. And so Constantinople, Christian, those are easy ways to remember that. Diocletian, divided. So fast forwarding a little bit here, we're getting to, these are your Latin phrases. Some of you saw this the other day. But the big thing that I want you to put, you absolutely have to put two things if I ask you about fall of Rome. You got to talk about the bad leadership of the emperors. You got to talk about the barbarians. The barbarians who were called barbarians to the Romans, this was a bit of a derogatory term. And it goes back to the origins of when they thought that when the barbarians talked, they thought they said bar, 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 bar. Well, a lot of them were German. So German has a very deep kind of accent down below in the lower part of your voice. So when they did speak, it was a bar, 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 bar. And so they just called them barbarians, which becomes barbarians. Now, to us, it's not derogatory because, honestly, they're mostly our ancestors. So if your ancestry is from Germany or France or England, then guess what? You're a barbarian just like me. Now, it doesn't mean necessarily act like them, but some of you, well, we'll just leave that one up in the air. So barbarians at the gate. So you have all these problems internally. All the stuff that we talked about before was internal for Rome. This stuff is external. This is on the outside of it. So Rome, not only are they having all these internal problems, but they're starting to get invaded by these Germanic, however you want to say it, basically around Germany, these different groups. And so you can see on this map here where they're coming from. The invasions of Roman Empire. Remember, Constantinople over here, you originally, well, that ends up being the new head of the Roman Empire. And then Rome itself, the original place, is getting hammered on all sides by these different groups. Now, originally, first of all, it was Carthage, we said, who ends up really becoming like the Vandals. But look and see all these groups all over the place, all different types, all different colors. Angles, the Saxons, who become the Anglo-Saxons, which is English. The Franks, the Goths, the Visigoths, Ostrogoths, the Huns, the Vandals, all these different groups. So you had these on all different sides. You had the Gauls, who were originally from France. Now, if you remember that video that I showed you, that little clip from Gladiator, that guy who said, "We who are about to die salute you," he is from Gaul. He was from France. The Anglo-Saxons, they come from Britain. Now, they were the Angles and they were the Saxons, so they become the Anglo-Saxons. And then where they conquer, we'll talk about this later, becomes Angleland, which becomes England, right? You got it. All right. So we look at these groups, and the Romans mocked them, bar, 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 all that stuff. But they also laughed at their clothing and their hair. But it makes sense when you think about it. If you look at the stuff that these guys had, look at this guy's spear back here, and you say, well, why is he carrying a spear? Well, it's like a harpoon because they were fishers. They were fishermen. They were up from north, around the North Sea and other places where they had water. So one of your weapons might be a spear. They had axes because they were from the woods. Makes sense to me. They had long hair and facial hair. Why? Because it was cold outside. It's also why they wore pants. And that is actually one of the things that the Romans made fun of them about, because they wore pants. Only lower class people wear pants. Everybody else wears togas and other outfits. And so they're like, oh, it's cold out. We're going to put more clothes on. That makes sense. So you also had this other group from outside of Europe called the Huns, led by some guy named Attila the Hun. Have you ever heard of him before? They were nomadic. They went out and conquered a lot of Asia, and then started to get into the eastern side of what would be Rome. So this is a big group too. The Franks. So you had two groups from France. You had the Gauls, and then you had the Franks. It's not the Franks. It's not like Frankfurters or hot dogs. Those, it's not the same people. So if we're looking at this, here's the Frankish kingdom up here. And then you had other groups. These would be like your Vikings up north, the Norse, the Swedes, and the Danes, if you know them. And then up here, these will be your Anglo-Saxons later on. And so, as I said, these were mostly Germanic tribes from the forests of Northern Europe. So these groups are the external threat versus the internal threat, which was Rome itself. So some of the bad things that start to happen for Rome. Again, Rome doesn't fall in a day. Rome is defeated in 378 at the Battle of Adrianople. So this battle is important because it kind of spells the end for Rome. That once one of these one of these barbarian groups ends up finding success, then others do too. Not too long afterwards, in 410 AD, the Visigoths end up capturing Rome and burning their records and looting their treasury. Now, looting their treasury, that's where all the riches are and their money. Burning their records, it doesn't mean that they burn their Beatles album and Rolling Stone stuff. No, that means that they burn like their history, their books, and it's kind of sad. History getting destroyed. Who knows what we could have learned, because these barbars couldn't read. They destroyed all this stuff. But I always like this picture because you see the barbarians. Obviously, the artist had a slight bias against the barbarians because they look very, very caveman-like and very distorted at times in their pictures. And then you have these all in white, good old Romans, and these barbars. How dare they come into Rome and destroy them? Well, they did. And then, not that long afterwards, 40 years later, after Rome, built itself back up, well, here's another group. The Vandals come in. The Vandals, they enter Rome in 455 AD. They spent 12 days stripping and burning the buildings. Stripping and burning the buildings, not separate things, because that would be awkward. So Rome gets hit twice in the span of like 40 years. Basically destroyed twice, rebuilt twice, and, well, it's kind of the end. But here's where that problem is for Rome is, again, hit on all sides by all different types of groups, pretty much on all sides. So this is where we actually get a word in our modern vernacular. It's the word vandalism. So if you say you're a vandal, you're vandalizing things. It actually comes from this group of barbarians called the Vandals, who went into Rome and, well, they vandalized things. They tore things apart. So vandalism, by definition, is the willful destruction of property. Something like you would see in this picture here, willfully destroyed on purpose. And so by AD 550, Western Roman Empire had faded away. So again, look at this. It's if we scroll back, and I'll go back to that point again because I know some of you guys are like, I couldn't write it down fast enough. So we're starting at like 378, but that's the barbarians. The internal part comes well before that. So then, it goes back to that last point here. 550, Western Empire had started to fade away, and then the Eastern does as well, basically getting taken over by other groups that come in from the East, including the Ottoman Empire at some point. So this is, again, Rome doesn't get destroyed in a day. It takes a while because it's so vast and so strong, but it's those internal issues and it's the external issues as well. So the legacy, last thing that we'll talk about here, and you can definitely count on a question being based on this stuff, I guess, on the test, is a legacy that we have of Rome. And I mean, it's everything that we've talked about so far. So none of this is new. It's all I'll basically recap of what we take in modern times from the Roman legacy. So let's look at some of these. The concept of government. This is something that we talked in the last section, that we have consuls who are presidents. We have praetors who are like judges. We have senators who would be like our Senate or lawmakers. And they're made up of patricians and plebeians, the middle class and the upper class people. So the concept of rule of law does come from the Greeks and the Romans. The idea that all people are equal under the law. All people are equal under the law. No matter who you are, celebrity, rich, famous, whatever, everybody should be, wink, wink, nod, nod, everybody should be equal under the law. And I found this for equality. It says demons, Nazis, ninjas, zombies, one size fits all. That's actually Gatling gun, if nobody knows what that is. Gatling gun or chopper gun, if you ever watched the movie Predator, one of my favorite movies. Other thing that we have learned from the Romans is that judges in courts should be fair. No matter who you are, no matter where you're from, you should have certain rights afforded to you if you go to court, something that we'll talk about when we get to the amendments of the Constitution, and that will be next year. You're also innocent until proven guilty, that it is under the auspices of the courts and the authorities to find guilt in you. You do not have to, basically prove your own guilt, because you should be innocent until they prove that you were guilty with evidence. That would be helpful. So concepts, we'll skip that because it's an old cartoon. No one knows who Michael Vick is anymore, I guess. But we also have the concept of civic duty. I say duty, not duty, because we have that story of Cincinnatus, the guy who went out from his field and was asked to be a dictator of Rome and help them defeat the barbars. And he said, okay, I'll do that. And then, well, he did it. And so that's the idea that citizens should be active in community and government, the least of which is voting, which we just did not too long ago. And then in terms of culture, things to talk about with culture, the idea of Latin. Now, if we had more time, we were all here collectively, we would have gone into Latin a little bit more. Actually, I do have a side thing of Roman numerals that we need to cover here at some point, probably when we come back from Christmas break. But Latin is shaped many modern languages, and you should know this. They use 26 letters. You're like, oh, that sounds familiar, hopefully. But if you look at these pictures, maybe not this weird guy on the right, but instead on the left, there are some Latin words that you might know. Panis, bread. Ignis, like ignite or ignition. Equus, like equestrian, like a horse. Populus, meaning a lot of people. Sol, like solar, the sun. Arbor, you like celebrate Arbor Day, go plant a tree. Terra, like terra firma, like the earth. Earth, whatever earth is. Earth. And ovum, which would be an egg. These are phrases that are used by doctors, lawyers, scientists. Even today, it's not like they walk around speaking Latin, but some of the phrases that they use might be familiar to you. I'm sure that when you did science class or took science class, or still taking, I guess, you probably use some Latin phrases. Some of the more famous ones that I've put on here, up top in the left corner, is Veni, Vidi, Vici, said by Julius Caesar. I came, I saw, I conquered. E pluribus unum, which is on our money, is out of many, plural, one. Unum, like Uno when you're playing Uno. Uno, slap it down. Cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am. Semper fidelis, which is said by the Marine Corps. Semper Fi, always faithful. Nam et ipsa scientiae potenta potesta es. Knowledge is power. And amor vincit omnia. Love conquers all. Yeah. Anyways, every plant and every animal has a Latin name. It's not like you're going, sunflower, is that Latin? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying like the proper science name for animals and plants is probably hard for you to say. Like for a shark, thank God we call it shark, and not a Carcharodon carcharias. That's really difficult to say. I'm glad we just say shark. Yeah, especially if you see somebody swimming in the ocean and you're like, Charcharodon charcharias. And people are like, what in the world? And then they get eaten. So yeah, so it's easier just to say shark. Architecture, we learn architecture from the Romans, who again stole it from the Greeks. They inspired many of our modern building examples, like say Washington D.C. Some of our cathedrals are Romanesque style. Might have a chance to go to those sometime, especially if we get to go on the DC trip in one of these years, if we ever open that back up again. Um, yeah. And then finally is the idea or concepts of religion, which is going to play into stuff we talk about for the rest of the year. Again, I'm not going to shove any of this down anybody's throats, but it's important to see the growth of Christianity in this time period because it really starts to take off and then it really becomes a factor in people's lives, especially in Europe and in what would be United States when we start talking about that with our founding fathers. So for Christianity, as we said, it's kind of ironic that in the beginning it didn't go so well for your early Christians, and then afterwards, well, when Rome falls, Christianity kind of blossoms and blooms and gets bigger. I would say it almost explodes. But it says began in the Roman Empire and it helped ideas to grow and spread. Look at this cartoon from the far side. Well, then you also have some persecution in it as well. And from this point, I guess that was the end of the notes there pretty quickly. Yeah, I suppose so. But anyways, those are your main things that I want you to be able to tell me. Politics, culture, obviously the gladiators and things like that. But there's a lot of tie-ins to Roman culture and things to build on. So as Rome falls, new things come up. It's like a forest fire. Forest fires, no one wants a forest fire, but it actually allows the forest to have regrowth and to start all over again and sometimes come back stronger even after something that's tragic. So same thing here. So even though the Roman Empire falls, Rome really reaps in the rewards, or sorry, Europe reaps in the oh, good God, rewards because they get to start from scratch. And really, that's where you get what we know as Europe today. So to end, here are a few more Latin phrases. Here's one that says, may barbarians invade your personal space. Quid agis medis? What's up, Doc? Braque tua ambitionnaire. Your fly is open. Hope not. And is there anything else? My thing's going slow here. Oh, looks like that's it. So on the your fly is open note, I guess we will end this. Like 17 minutes, not so bad. So what you should do is you should start reviewing. You should start look over your vocabulary words, and there you go. So test is actually going to be Thursday and Friday. I'm going to split these into 2 parts. So yeah, good luck and enjoy. That's Rome 2. See you later.